This is for the recording that's being made. She asked me to give her a cue. Welcome, everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this afternoon to hear our second of the day important talk on issues associated with undocumented immigration, and especially focusing on students, DACA youth, and dreamers. And we're very fortunate to have with us an illustrious speaker. I'm Luis Fraga, the director of the Institute for Latino Studies, and on behalf of the Institute and its staff and its faculty, its 29 affiliated faculty fellows, it's about 60 majors and minors, and the 500 students a year who are affected by and have the opportunity to study in the courses that we have at our Institute for Latino Studies. We welcome all of you. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I want to take the personal privilege of acknowledging the person that brought our guest speaker here, Professor Jorge Bustamante. We were calculating it. We've known each other for at least 28 years. When I was here at Notre Dame before, and in the course of that time, Professor Bustamante, as many of you know, is a professor of sociology, the Conley Professor of Sociology here at Notre Dame, and one of the, I think it's fair to say, world's most noted experts on issues associated with migration and undocumented migration, with a specific focus not just on Mexico and the U.S., but a significant focus on Mexico and the United States, with over 200 publications and reports and publications in countries like Spain and Germany and Japan, as well as in the United States, and of course in Mexico for a very long period of time. So we are indebted to Professor Bustamante for bringing our guest speaker. Professor Armando Vasquez-Ramos is our guest speaker for today, a professor at California State University, Long Beach. He has been promoting educational opportunities for Chicano, Mexican, and Latino populations for more than 49 years. He's taught courses on Chicano-Latino education, history, immigration, politics, public policy, the United States and Mexico, and has been affiliated with the Latino Studies Department at California State University, Long Beach for quite a while. As I understand it, he is a graduate of California State University, Long Beach, which should serve as an incentive for all of you Notre Dame undergraduates to realize that sometimes you never leave and you always stay while you're at your home institution. He has been an incredible innovator in many ways in bringing important issues of Chicano-Latino communities, and especially issues associated with immigration, to the academy, to the classroom, to community-based organizations, to using, if you will, the academy and the opportunities that universities to provide to innovate and promote that intersection of knowledge creation, understanding of policy issues, and activism that I think many of us aspire to, but have not done as well as Professor Armando Vasquez-Ramos has done. I could go on and on. Well, that's I think, your phone. Hello, President Trump? President Trump? Yes, it's about to begin. Please have your agents here to recognize what it is. Oh, sorry. That's your phone. That's the first time that's ever happened, that a president calls at the time. Today, he's going to talk to us about something that's very, very significant, and that is how it is that a number of different programs, but especially one that he has founded, how it is that programs have facilitated dreamers, undocumented students in the United States, rebuilding ties with Mexico and with leaders in Mexico, with students in Mexico, and with their families in Mexico in extremely important and significant ways. The title of his talk is Dreamers' Experiences, Rejoining Ties with Mexico. Please join me in providing a warm Notre Dame welcome to Professor Armando Vasquez-Ramos.
Thank you very much, Luis, and all of you for being here, and certainly I've had a chance to meet and interact with some of our colleagues. Thank you, Karen and Lali, for making all the arrangements for this wonderful visit. And of course, Roberto Gonzalez, who some of you might have been attending his talk earlier today, that coincides with this topic because he has published and done extensive research on the topic of dreamers. And of course, what I wanted to share with you is what has been our experience now for the last 3.5 years, pioneering a concept that was unbeknown to most universities, and that was the opportunity that DACA offered through what is known as a policy known as advanced parole. I know it sounds like a criminal that's being given an early release, right? But it's a term that they use when you're paroled out of the country and you're allowed back in. And it's the same principle that is given to those that are protected by TPS, Temporary Protected Status, which is for those 8 nations that have that protection, especially the 3 Central American countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. But there's 5 other nations in Africa that have a similar protected status. Now, TPS is also under attack. And we're looking also at a Haitian population that is also at risk of losing that temporary protected status. So when DACA came about, it was based on that concept that Obama proposed and then ordered the original executive order known as Deferred Action for Children and Arrivals, which is known as DACA, and where this population of protected dreamers comes about, that is about 800,000. I want to just kind of give you a background about how this program comes about, because it was quite frankly an adventure. It was an experiment. And I started with 2 of my students that participated with us during a spring break trip to Mexico. I've been doing study abroad for our department and other students on our campus for more than 20 years. And so finding out about that provision of DACA, I talked with these 2 students that were willing to take the gamble. They're really the pioneers because nothing's for sure. And the permit known as advanced parole has a stamp disclosure right there that tells you this is no guarantee that we're going to let you back in. And this has been the fear that we have seen ever since the possibility of Trump being elected, and then once he was elected, that literally all of U.S. higher education shut down. They said, no more, don't let him. You're putting him at risk. And quite frankly, I found along the way that it was more out of self-interest, the universities, including my own, that they decided it's too much of a gamble. And it's an issue of self-preservation, an issue of liability, and of course, public image. And that was the primary reason that in this last group, we just did a trip during the summer. We came back on August the 21st. We decided to go through another institution, to collaborate, to partner, to apply for this advanced parole permit through a Mexican university. And this is how our collaboration started with El Colegio de la Frontera Norte, which was founded by Dr. Bustamante, but also where there was a tremendous amount of interest to see how we could create this partnership. So we did the entire program through Colegio, and Dr. Bustamante offered to teach a class, a short seminar for our participants. And this has been the integral part of every one of the 6 groups that I have taken to Mexico, always anchored with a course, and because we wanted to make sure that the permits would be granted. And I did 6 groups beginning in 2014, over 160 participants, and 100% approval and most important, 100% return. Because that has always been the fear. Okay, what's going to happen? And I've had from Congress members to other academics that have always questioned, you're putting them at risk. What's going to happen if they don't let them back in? And it has always been, my feeling is to let them know you need to ask them. Because let me tell you, dreamers are driven by this desire to reconnect, to fill that void that they have because they have been torn out of that root, that connection with family, with the place of birth, but also with their own culture. And as you know, anyone can have contact through Skype and through Blue Jeans and FaceTime, but there's nothing like touching your grandma, or there's nothing like being back to the place where you were born. And then, of course, there's some that have never been back in more than 25 years, or that they were so young that they couldn't recall even sight or sound of their grandparents or their tios. Some of them have gone back to meet brothers and sisters that they had never met. Because deportation also tears families apart. And you end up with a mom or a dad that ends up deported or the divorce, whatever, and they start families. And so that has been the array of experiences. What we found out also early on is that we had to let them go on their own. In the first group that I took, after those first 2 students in the spring break of 2014, I took an entire group of 15 from Cal State Long Beach. But I wouldn't let them go. I had their relatives come to Mexico City for them to interact at least for a weekend. And what I encountered with that particular group was a lot of resistance, a lot of frustration. And to some extent, it was cruel for us to give them a couple of days a weekend to see their family, and it's like giving a baby a candy, and then you say, now I got to take it back. Say again goodbye to your grandparents or to your relatives, because it's always not long enough. And the fact that as grown-ups, we always take students that are over 21, because then you have an adult relationship. The issue of liability and the responsibility involved is major. So what we started doing thereafter, and this is the video that I'm going to show you in a minute, is to give them a chance to spend at least 10, 12 days, some cases even 2 weeks, with their families. But we also incorporated into the preparation how to be ready for the cultural shock, how to be prepared to encounter your own family. And what they become is literally a bridge. For their family here, they want to make sure that you see all of these tios and that you tell your this comadre this, and that you got to go see this place. And of course, all of them want to go to the cemetery. They want to visit those that have gone before us. They want to go back to those places they remember. And in some instances, it's just a calling to define your identity. Todos se sienten mexicanos, but they do not understand what that is. And so part of what we learned along the way was, in order for them to be fully prepared, is to create a mechanism for them upon landing to have group therapy. And we contracted a group of psychologists that prepare them before they even go home. And we do typically 2 days, 3 days. I always do a seminar in Mexico City. And in many ways, that missing link of having an awareness coming all together, because after that group in 2015, you'll see this group is a lot more diverse from several different states, many universities, and also different backgrounds. Regardless of whether there's any dreamers here or not, there's no way that you can assess how much that call is there. I've had people from the consulado tell me, don't take them. It's too dangerous. Do it at a better time. And one consul in particular told me, Armando, tell me, why is it they want to go so bad? And it's almost like dumbfounding because it's unexplainable. You need to get that from the person. And so we had in the last 3 groups, participants from New York, from Wyoming, from the state of Washington, Arizona, Utah, Colorado, because they did not have that option at their colleges and universities. And they also saw the design of the program and our track record. Frankly, I mean, that gives you some degree of assurance. Everyone is scared. Everyone has fear, starting with me. Because you cannot imagine what would happen if any of those students had not been able to come back. What do you tell the parents? Sure, they're adults, but you're still accountable. So what we did in this last group, and I'm going to show you this film in just a couple of minutes, because he was now under the era of Trump. Our winter program returned 5 days before Trump took office in January of 2017. And then we waited, and we saw that DACA was not being touched. And we decided we have to do it. And this is when the universities began to say, absolutely not. And so we pursued the relationship with El Colegio La Frontera Norte, and we said, let's take the gamble. Because it's worth for literally hundreds of applicants that we had, for them to pay their way, and for them to have a very, very critical benefit, which most people did not understand. And that has always been, for me, the most important benefit, which is that upon reentry, when any of these dreamers that receive advanced parole, when you reenter now, you're going through inspection, whether it's at an airport or across the border, which means that you're now on record as a lawful entrant. That then allows you to legalize, primarily through marriage. You can be legalized through a sibling that's 21 or older, or through employment. But let me tell you, out of about 160 altogether that have taken, about 40 of them have now, through marriage, in 6 months, they get their green card without having to go back out of the country. Because if you don't have a lawful entry, then you have to return. And typically they send you to Ciudad Juárez to wait and wait. And sometimes it may never happen. This is why there's many families that have children born in the U.S., they have been married for many years, but even if one of the spouses is legal, they will not take the gamble because you don't know if it's going to happen. And this process allows for immediate response, and within 6 months, in most cases, they have been granted permanent resident status. And of course, that's a gamble that most people are willing to take, especially as this window was closing. So our biggest challenge today, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about where do we stand today, is that when DACA was terminated a month or so ago, a month and a half ago, on September 5, as you know, the U.S. government said DACA is dead in 6 months. But on that same date, they canceled retroactively advanced parole. And that's what we're challenging in court through the Attorney General, California's Attorney General, the University of California, and several other lawsuits that have been filed, because it is not only unjust, it's without foundation why you would cancel that aspect or that provision of DACA retroactively. We had a group of 75 from 16 different states and 20-something universities that were ready to go in December. They had filed their applications in May, in June, July, and there would have been plenty of time for them to be approved. Well, what happened was this politics of DACA is going to be, or the president was going to be sued by 20-something governors, and they pressured, but it was all a setup. It was all a setup to execute DACA. So undoubtedly, it's been a political football. So now what we're looking at is how can we still, either through legislation or through the courts, maintain DACA and that aspect of the law, which is the ability to return home, but also this legal benefit, which in some cases may not happen again. It all depends on what's the future of DACA. So let me do this because I think this will give you a sense of the importance for those that have participated and why they're engaged. We're convening this Saturday a reunion of sorts. We call it the summit of the California-Mexico Dreamers. We have a network of over 200, including those that were unable to go in December. And frankly, because we're concerned, where do we go from here? How much are they willing to fight? How much are they willing to become proactive and take leadership roles? Because they have their ticket punched. And the selection of all of these participants has always been based on the principle that you have to commit to pay it forward, to help other dreamers to have the same opportunity. So we're going to go from there in terms of what other possibilities. So what do I do here? That's it, right? Okay.
Documented, not afraid. Documented, not afraid. Documented, not afraid. Undocumented.
Between sobs, hugs, and laughter, 30 dreamers, students protected by DACA, count the hours remaining before their dream of returning to Mexico becomes a reality. Nadia can't control the emotion seeing that her daughter Stephanie will be the first to return to Mexico in 17 years.
Y cuando ves a tus hijos realizados, piensas que vale la pena. Fue grande el esfuerzo, pero lo hicimos.
Stephanie came to California when she was only 5 years old, and she still remembers her childhood in Mexico City. And she is very emotional to know that she will soon see her family. Students from 16 colleges and universities have joined this adventure thanks to a program made possible by Professor Armando Vasquez-Ramos, which allows them to return to their roots.
Una tercera ocasión que llevo a estos jóvenes soñadores, los Dreamers, que no habían tenido la oportunidad de regresar a su lugar de nacimiento.
For almost 2 years, Professor Armando Vasquez-Ramos has traveled with more than 50 Dreamer students, and his primary intent is to train each one to become leaders that will start similar programs at their colleges and universities. All these students travel with a special permit granted by the U.S. that will allow them to leave for 24 days and return legally. During the time the students will be in Mexico, they will spend 8 days with their family relatives and to live again in the land they left behind.
Pues ya estamos aquí en el avión y es minutos de esperar para poder llegar a México. Estoy muy contenta y emocionada y pues goodbye Los Angeles y espero vernos pronto.
On behalf of this entire flight crew at Southwest Airlines, welcome to Mexico City. Please remain seated with your seatbelt fastened, seat back and tray table, and the full upright locked in.
Stephanie, me siento muy emocionada igual, con mucha adrenalina, esperando ya poder ver la ciudad de México.
Yo siento que hay muy buena química en este grupo y que vamos no solamente a aprender, sino a hacer muchas cosas, porque todos tenemos mucho más que hacer.
Buenas noches, mi nombre es Moisés Pérez, yo estudio en la Universidad de Cal State Long Beach y estoy muy agradecido por esta oportunidad y estoy muy emocionado y ansioso por ver a mis familiares el sábado.
Mi nombre es María Dolores Gudiño, vengo del colegio de la ciudad de Long Beach y es un laberinto de emociones.
La parte que me impactó más en este día fue cuando el avión aterrizó. Sentí muchas emociones en mi cuerpo, pero al mismo tiempo como libertad emocionalmente, y estoy lista para aprender sobre mi cultura y traer lo que aprendí allá y practicarlo allá y siempre traer mis raíces mexicanas entre mí.
Me siento muy contenta y al igual muy liberada de que nos salimos de la jaula de oro y estamos haciendo esto para luego poder ayudar a los demás que no pudieron venir en esta vez. Entonces vamos a hacerlo, muchachos.
Nada de helado.
Hola, mi nombre es Mariela Gutiérrez. Soy nacida en México, en Guadalajara, Jalisco.
Parte de mi familia sabe que voy a ir y les dije que lo queden en secreto. Entonces la otra parte de la familia nomás piensan que va a haber una fiesta.
Les voy a llegar de sorpresa. Todo Estados Unidos sabe que voy, pero menos mi familia de Guadalajara. Entonces, a ver si no les doy un paro cardíaco cuando los mire.
Llevo 14 años sin ver a mi familia.
Ya voy a cumplir 12 años que no voy para allá y estoy regresando a México después de 11 años de no venir. Mi mamá, para darnos una nueva vida, nos llevó para Estados Unidos. Ella se fue primero, somos 5 y los 5 a todos nos llevaron de ilegales.
Es algo impactante que sí te conmueve, porque sabes muy bien lo que ellos han estado sufriendo. Uno nada más está organizando y está implementando lo que es una idea y realizándolo ya como un sueño, pero para ellos ha sido la presión personal de la familia.
Me da emoción de estar aquí, pero a la misma vez me da tristeza porque sé que mis hermanas, mi mamá, dieran todo por estar aquí. Estoy muy emocionada, conmovida también con mis compañeros al ver que se reúnen con sus familias.
Hoy en día he tenido la oportunidad de reunirme con mi familia aquí en el DF y estoy muy contenta de que juntos podemos, nos hayan dado y brindado esta oportunidad de poder reunirnos después de 17 años.
Yo no tengo palabras para agradecerles a todas las personas que hicieron este proyecto tan lindo, tan hermoso, porque gracias a ustedes que lo hicieron, está mi hija con nosotros. Nunca habíamos tenido la oportunidad de darle un abrazo y espero que sigan adelante ustedes para que las demás personas continúen, que tengan ese gusto de ver a sus familiares.
Muchas gracias por habernos apoyado a estar aquí, a Juntos Podemos, al profesor Vázquez, Cetlalic.
Gracias por la oportunidad, gracias a Juntos Podemos, al profesor Vázquez y a Cetlalic por apoyarnos y ayudarnos en el proceso de poder venir.
Muy agradecida por esta oportunidad que nos brindan de poder estar en México de nuevo. Gracias.
Es un primer escalón para poder multiplicar este modelo en cientos de universidades y miles de soñadores que pudieran tener esta misma oportunidad de regresar.
Ya todos se conocen, aunque se separaron por una semana. Y sí, es muy importante oír de ustedes esta mañana cómo les fue, porque creo que es una parte, quizás la más importante del viaje. Pero ahora entramos en la fase de la chamba, de empezar a aterrizar algunas de estas impresiones, la experiencia que tuvieron en su visita a sus familias, a sus pueblos, los lugares que han visitado o descubierto en estos últimos 8 días.
Mi nombre es Yesenia y yo fui a Oaxaca. El pueblo de donde soy se llama Vasquez-Ramos. Y lo primero que fui cuando llegué, fui a la casa de mi abuelita. Disculpen. Ya no la pude ver porque yo ya sabía, ella falleció hace 3 meses y estaba en mis planes verla, pero ya no pude. Vi a mi tía tiene que 16 años que no la he visto y no me conoció. Cuando entré me dijo que pasara, pero luego me preguntó que quién era.
Yo creo que estar con mi familia en sí fue algo muy bonito, ver a mis abuelitos que ellos desde las 3 de la mañana se paraban a trabajar y pues igual, ¿no? Verlos a ellos trabajar tanto y sí, fue una experiencia muy bonita. Gracias.
Algo que me impactó a mí, el día que yo llegué, bueno, la noche antes que llegué, íbamos en rumbo, yo y mi hermano, él me recogió en el DF. Y tristemente hubo una situación en el rancho donde se mataron 2 primos. Pues llegamos al rancho de luto y es algo que me impactó mucho porque en el sentido me impactó la conexión que tiene una comunidad como un pueblo en México. Todos estaban unidos y en un cierto sentido lo vi como una oportunidad de participar en un funeral. Y para participar en los funerales que nunca me tocó, el de mi abuelito, el de mi hermana, unos primos. Y fue algo muy rico en el sentido, tristemente es una situación mala, pero fue una manera de convivir con el pueblo. Y sí, eso es lo que me impactó.
Gracias, qué interesante.
Bueno, este traje de baño, ahora que regresé otra vez a Guadalajara con mi abuelita, ella me dio una sorpresa de darme este traje de baño mío. Este era mío cuando yo tenía 9 meses. Tengo videos de cuando yo caminaba adentro de esta ropa tan chiquita y ahora estoy bien grande. Y es muy importante para mí porque o sea, yo crecí en México, entonces esto representa mi nacimiento en México y mi nacimiento de ser mexicana. Entonces es muy importante para mí reservarlo para enseñarles a mi familia que tengo en los Estados Unidos o tal vez a una familia que yo tenga en el futuro, porque de aquí realmente soy de México, entonces eso que representa mi nacimiento en muchas maneras aquí en México y estoy muy agradecida con mi abuela que lo conservó bastantemente para llevármelo yo otra vez a Estados Unidos. Sí.
La experiencia ha sido muy buena, pero a la misma mente como muy triste. O sea, es muy bonito estar aquí, pero al mismo tiempo sabes que mucha gente, como mi familia o la familia de todos los demás, quisiera estar aquí. Entonces, al mismo tiempo, o sea, es un conflicto de sentimientos estar aquí en México. Pero
la experiencia ha sido muy maravillosa. He tenido, y emocional, ¿no? Pienso que una parte muy grande fue reencontrarme con mi familia y eso me dejó muy emocionada, pero a la misma vez un poquito triste. Y entonces aún estoy tratando de formular mis reflexiones, ¿no? Porque todo, aunque hemos estado aquí casi ya 3 semanas, todo ha pasado muy rápido.
How do you feel right now?
I feel happy but sad.
Happy and sad, why? Can you explain?
Es porque estoy dejando toda mi familia acá en México y se siente algo muy triste, ¿no? Muy emocional, tengo mucho sentimiento, pero bueno, ya vamos para casa.
Ya para casa, ¿no? ¿Cómo te sientes?
Estoy contento de regresar a ver a mi familia. Muy agradecido por la oportunidad de este programa, de este viaje. Y me regreso contento y con más conocimiento de su cultura mexicana.
Okay. Me avisa a donde te vayas a despedir, ¿ok? Sí, sí.
Febrero, ¿no? Igualmente, salúdame a tu mamá y
Sí. 25 y 26. Pararle ahí y hacer un par de observaciones porque, ¿cómo? All right. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to just make some brief comments because watching it makes me emotional. How did it impact you? I think I had a partner right there that was dabbing at her. Andy, ¿sí te afectó, verdad? Las emociones, it's so powerful. And if any of you have either yourself, a dreamer, or someone in your family, that's that void that's missing. And that's why they're driven to make it back. ¿Se salieron a llorar? No. So anyway, I wanted to just point out, watching it again, one of them became the student body president at Cal State Long Beach. 2 of them are now, although they haven't, gotten married, and one of them got married, but there's 2 of them that are working for city council deputies. There's another who's the Dream Center director at UCLA, Valeria. She's the one with the shawl towards the end. So it's empowering, and it's also so important to get that monkey off your back. To be eligible to legalize is the ultimate. Now, something that I wanted to also observe, and this group was not as disproportionate as the one that we just did this past summer through Colegio La Frontera Norte. Did any of you notice, maybe like in this classroom, that there's more women than men? The group that we just came back from during the summer from Colegio was 30 of 35. were women. And throughout the program, I would say 80% has always been women. So we have a problem here. The men are flakes. And maybe it's proof that women are a little bit more, if not very much more intelligent. Or let's not use that reference to cojones, okay? Tienen más ovarios. Okay, so it's something really peculiar because it's no longer what it used to be. And we had a conversation earlier how in U.S. higher education, Latinas are outnumbering Latinos 2-to-1. And also, of course, they are driven to overcome those barriers that have been cultural. I don't think that it is any longer the cultural barriers at home. They are going past somebody telling them, oh, no, mija, you can't go to college. Or your brother's going to go and then you're going to go. Or you're not leaving this house until you're married. It's in the numbers. And so the experience that many of these students have had also come together because they all come back with a greater sense of responsibility. They become that connecting point with their families. One of them in particular had not seen her father like for 20 years. So there was this issue about abandonment. And that's all she knew. The father had left. So she wanted to confront that abandonment. And what she found out meeting with her father is that it was quite the opposite. Mom's parents didn't like him. And this was the story of the family. El papá las había abandonado. So when this encounter takes place, she calls mom. A ver, dame cuentas. Let's see who's lying here. And she had to admit. She said, no, mija, it was not your father. My family didn't like him. And see, these are burdens that you don't even understand or anticipate because you've been disconnected. So the emotional part to me has tremendous impact. Stephanie, la chilloncita with abuelita. I mean, it's amazing because they got there late, and when they saw them coming, I mean, they just rushed to each other. And that's where that really important scene. But what happens in all of our programs is once they visit at home is decompression. It's reflection. It's sharing. And you probably picked up on that one young man who came back to a funeral of two cousins. But what he shared with us was that he had actually fulfilled this emptiness and not having been able to be there for his grandfather and a sister that he never knew, he never met. So there's so many other aspects of this potential opportunity. Now, reality is, it's gone, right? And as it appears right now, they decided to kill it. They denied what was already applications that were paid for, that met all the requirements, and that were done before the end of DACA was announced on September 5th, even though DACA is still in existence until March of next year. So that's what we're challenging in court. And that, in fact, could happen. If it all depends on how the courts rule on the situation. So I think that I wanted to make some observations that, because I've been following how this is unfolding, and perhaps it's daring to say it's probably good. There's probably some positive aspects to the demise of DACA. Only because, and I'm not here advocating Trump's policies, only because he has brought so much attention. A month ago, 2 months ago, we didn't have the awareness, we didn't have the appreciation, we did not have the empathy for what is now a front and center issue throughout the United States. And frankly, nobody cared. Now that DACA is on the chopping block, it seems that there's a greater sensitivity, even from Republicans. They're also looking at the 2018 elections, and they're looking about a solution. But we're also facing the possibility this is still another Trump political ploy. It's a political football. And that is being tied to other requirements, like funding building the wall, or that parents will be subject to deportation. And so when we refer to a clean bill, it simply means that it doesn't have any other requirements. And that's the real battle that is unlikely to happen now by the end of the year, because that was the push. We have less than 30 legislative days. And with all the bandits that we discover every day, it's unlikely that this is going to take greater priority. I refer to this empathy, and that's probably the worst thing that we want to give dreamers, quite frankly. Dreamers are fed up with people coming to them and say, I'm with you. You're not alone. Estamos contigo. Because that has been the reality all along. And dreamers have been living with that shadow all their lives. So now is not the time to be empathetic. Now is the time to act. And I think that, frankly, I'm more concerned by the lack of action, the lack of response. And I'll start with the dreamers themselves. Because it was almost like a flash in the pan. And now you see or hear very, very little mobilization. It's been less than 2 months. And now we're bumping up against the holidays, right? Now we're bumping up against the legislative process. And it's simply not going to take place fast enough, not by the end of the year. And of course, it's not only dreamers that need to step up. I think that the plus, the benefit, if you can see a silver lining, has to do with a wake-up call that it represents upon our community. And I'll be very blunt with all of you here, the students. Because in my opinion, I come from the student movement of the 60s and the 70s, and when we were facing racism and discrimination and something really nasty that you guys don't have to face, Vietnam, the draft. And a civil rights movement that was percolating, civil rights movements of all kinds. And today, it seems that there is no student movement, in my opinion, anywhere. There is no mobilization. After almost 10 months of this nightmare, is there mobilization happening? It's almost like we have become accustomed to the nightmare. It's almost like our community, let's start with Latinos, are hoping that it'll just go away. And let me tell you, we haven't had the amount of massive deportation that is anticipated, that could still happen. Not even to the level of the amount of deportation that we had under Obama's 8 years. Think about it. We had almost 3 million immigrants deported during 8 years of Obama's administration. And of course, towards the end, there was DACA, and there was a number of other policies that, including opening relations with Cuba, that he should have and could have when Democrats controlled the House and the Senate, and when he promised to do it. So I'm not a fan here, or I don't feel any nostalgia for Obama, nor do I trust the Democrats to resolve it. It's really communities of color that need to stand up. And in particular, and it was mentioned earlier in Roberto's talk about the Asian population. The fact is, if not, Google it or look it up, that under Obama's administration during 8 years, almost 3 million deportations, but 96% were Latinos. Don't believe me, look it up. So we ended up with more than 2 million Mexicans deported, and at least 500,000 Central Americans. And the worst part of that, and this is the other category of the flip side of the dreamers. We have today in Mexico over 800,000 U.S. citizen children. Let me repeat that. Kids born in this country that were forced to go with their deported parents and that are living in hell, being denied access to schools or to social or health services because they're not Mexican. They're eligible and they can become Mexicanized, right? They can become legalized. But it is a bureaucratic and worse situation than undocumented kids have in this country, because here we guarantee by law access to public schools. And what's happening on that flip side of the coin is that there's almost no consciousness that these are U.S. citizens and that have been denied and violated their constitutional rights and their human rights because of the exposure to danger, as well as of children's rights. So anyway, that's maybe digressing a little bit, but what I'm here to say is, quite frankly, not only are students asleep at the wheel, because I don't see student movements, we're also concerned about where are the churches? Where are the labor unions? Where are the NGOs? Why are we still accepting this nightmare that we have been living with for the last almost 10 months? So, part of the reflection that I'm basing it on is the fact that right after DACA was announced as ended in 6 months, we all rushed to help those that were eligible for renewal. Everyone's attention went, okay, there was 154,000 that were eligible to renew before October 5. Otherwise, they cannot renew. How many renewed? Does anybody know? 25% did not renew, 36,000. So what happened there? There was money all over the place. The Mexican government, the universities, I don't know if Notre Dame put money up for helping dreamers, but there was definitely more awareness, more consciousness, resources. So how do you explain that 25% of those eligible for renew decided to just walk away? What is in their mind? They're heading back? They're going to go back underground? They just don't care? They didn't know? They didn't have? Or is it fear? I mean, fear is something that is a constant. But we cannot succumb to that. So let me leave it at that, because I'd rather have some time to answer questions, whatever comments we would like to engage. Anyone? Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for the information. But my questions are two questions. So is there another narrative? Because the Democrats use the narrative of Obama, el bueno, ¿no? El que se vaya al cielo because of DACA. And the Republicans that this is a plan of Obama, so we had to finish it because it was Obama's creation. But is there another narrative about the creation of DACA? Is there another narrative? Is another DACA was created because of something else? And especially I'm talking about the dreamers in this case. And also, you mentioned that we are losing hope on politics, and we have to go to the communities. But also, we should be also critical within the organizations that help dreamers. In this case, the internalization of this narrative that the dreamers are the good people, but the parents are the bad ones because they brought them. And organizations, and I'm talking about like Chirla and Los Angeles, they for a time they use this language that don't DACA, don't look bad at the DACA. They were not responsible for being here, so they adopt this language. So yes, we have to go back to the communities, but also we have to be critical within the communities. So those are my questions.
I think the first part of your question now, let's recognize that DACA has always been a political agenda. Obama did not grant DACA out of some process of evaluation and coming to the conclusion that this was the right thing to do. He was under pressure. And this is when the mobilization of dreamers provided a positive end result. But he was under pressure so that he could get reelected. It was right before the 2012 election. So when the program begins, again, there was many more than half did not apply for DACA. We're talking about 2.2 million dreamers, and only almost 800,000 applied. It was also a political football for Obama when he continued to say he could not fix the immigration problem through executive action. In other words, he could have applied the same principle through executive action to protect the parents or any of those that would be eligible if they had already started paperwork or if they had grounds to be legalized under a legislation like the immigration reform criteria. But he kept on lying. 25 times in public, he's recorded saying, that's the job of the Congress. I cannot do that. I do not have the power. And I think you can tell already that I'm not a fan of Mr. Obama because he was a constitutional lawyer. He was a Harvard professor in constitutional law. Don't tell me you don't know the law. And then he turns around and he says, okay, I'm not going to do it. Yes, I am. I will after the elections of 2014. And then they lose the Senate. And at that point, he says, I'm going to extend and expand DACA and create this new program called DAPA, Deferred Action for Parents of Americans. These are the kids that I was talking about that have been forced into some country they don't know. They're U.S. citizens, but because of the deportation of their parents, they have been massively deported under Obama's administration. And it didn't quite fit the picture because the Obama administration never responded to the litigation that blocked DACA and DAPA. They decided not to create a political response. Now, where they failed, and this is the same grounds why the termination of DACA by this administration is being challenged in court. 3 basic reasons. One, that it violates due process because it targets a particular group of people. It is also not an announcement, a decision. This is not just reversing an executive order. This means that you need to also do hearings and pass regulations. That's what they attacked Obama on. Obama's administration could have made DACA and DAPA viable if they had published for at least 90 days the new policy and for hearings to take place. In my humble opinion, they did not want to do that. They wanted to shift the blame on the Republicans to proselytize, to get the Latino vote for Hillary. So, to me, nothing changes. DACA and Dreamers continue to be a political football. And that's, very realistically, that's how the Trump administration is using it. They put it out there, and then they say, oh, no, we're going to have other requirements. We're going to push for DACA, the permanent, DREAM Act, whatever the case it may be. There's 5 or 6, Roberto covered that earlier today, pieces of legislation. But there hasn't been one hearing. And the Republicans are the ones that are controlling the Congress. So they need to authorize hearings. They need to bring the two sides together to reconcile all those 5 different versions into one that they can negotiate before it goes to the president. So I'm not hopeful, but as I mentioned earlier, this is the closest we have come to having a viable alternative, a possibility for this particular population. And I don't think that we should take it with god-awful trade-offs like building the wall or deporting the parents because they're the ones that committed the original sin, right? Well, what it comes down to is politics, and this is where the influence of student movements, every campus should have a mobilization in support of Dreamers. Why? Because this is a civil rights, a social issue that affects so many people. And it's, like I said, the best political climate ever in terms of sensitivity and awareness. So I appreciate those 2 questions. I think they're very relevant because it brings reality to how effective or how likely we're going to succeed in getting legislation, even just to protect Dreamers, let alone the fact that we need comprehensive immigration reform, but that's unlikely to happen as long as both houses are controlled by the Republicans. Other questions? Ya los espanté, Jorge. It's depressing, huh? Go ahead.
I think that there is another facet of this phenomenon. There is another facet of this phenomenon that I think that we should take into account for the complete understanding of the phenomenon of these persons, DACA people and Dreamers, which is the education, the image that they have received of Mexico during the training, during their time in the educational system of the United States. Mm-hmm. The fact that they were told stereotypes and false statements, such as the one that I had to denounce when I was a faculty member at the University of Texas at Austin some years back, when I was appointed for a committee to take a look at the textbooks to find areas of discrimination against Mexicans. And I found in a book that was required readings in high school in Texas by Walter Prescott Webb on the Texas Rangers, stating that the Mexicans were cruel by nature, and then expanding on the same kind of image. And that was a required reading at the time when I was a faculty member there. It is up to this point, I'm not sure. But the point that I want to make is that these dreamers receive that education about Mexico. And then it's a little bit counter-logical that they had a wish to join your program, to go to Mexico, to go to that country that about which they have received such a negative images, full of false statements and stereotypes, and let alone over generalizations. So that's something that I think that should be an element of the explanation that you give to make sense out of the program that you organize. And I want to express my deep satisfaction to have had an idea to invite you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I think, quite frankly, all Latinos are misinformed or provided K-12 education with prejudice, history, and stereotypes, and even the type of teachers that we have. Something that, again, going back to the late 60s and early 70s, that was the Civil Rights Commission chaired by the president of Notre Dame, the Reverend, or the president at that time, Hesberg, I can't remember his first name, but he was the chair of the Civil Rights Commission. And under that period, there was a 5-year study done on how Mexican Americans' education was being conducted. It's towards quality of education of Mexican Americans. Look it up. There's 5 reports and a 6th report that had all of the recommendations and conclusions. But the reason I bring it up is that today, those are similar conditions that we have with racist teachers that have offended and made a lot of kids uncomfortable since DACA was eliminated. Or now that Trump is here, you're going to have to go. I mean, this is part of the syndrome that we have back there. The teachers have the liberty to discriminate or to pass on misinformation. One of the things that I'm not sure where Notre Dame is at in terms of ethnic studies, and that I have been working on for the last couple of years. We just started our 3rd year of teaching Cal State Long Beach ethnic classes in public schools, in high school, on Saturdays, with college credit. And this is probably the only district in the United States that is doing that now. There's just another district that is going to add on. But there's no reason why in Notre Dame, if they have ethnic studies classes, they couldn't be teaching them at a local district. And whatever public universities or communities that you come from, because unless we do that early on, I tell you, Chicanos, U.S.-born Mexican Americans, have this same problem. They're misinformed, miseducated, and they don't have identity, or they grow up with a sense of negative identity about being Mexican. So anyway, other questions or comments? Should I start picking on you? Question.
Sir, I had a really quick question. I want to be optimistic. I hope to be optimistic and continue to be optimistic. What do you see happening April 1st next year?
April 1st? After March 5th. I sincerely think that it's going to continue to be a political football, that Trump could easily say, I'm the good guy. I'm going to extend it another 6 months. Congress hasn't done their job, and I will sign the bill. Just get me a bill, as long as it also gives me the funding to build a wall, or as long as it's also going to get rid of half of the undocumented population. So it's going to continue to be, in my opinion, that I'm not optimistic that anything can happen until Democrats regain at least one of the two houses, either the Senate or the House of Representatives. Now, that could happen next November, almost precisely a year from now. And that could really make things different. But as long as both houses are controlled by the Republicans, look, as much as they don't like the way the country is going and this person that has no name, I mean, what do we call him? Okay, we've called him everything already, right? From Hitler to Nazi to everything. This is totally unprecedented. But it's a party that won out of surprise. They themselves didn't think they were going to win. And for them, it was better to have won the election and to swallow the shame, the aberration this person is as President of the United States. We have this senator from Arizona who just quit. And he used a key word. I will not be, what's the term he used? It will come back to me. But he knows, I cannot be part of this anymore. We can no longer accept this and be cooperative with him. So, we've been saying, oh, it's going to implode. The Republicans are going to get fed up with them. It's not happening yet. It's not happening yet. And I think that's part of the problem, that the U.S. Political mentality clearly shows that racism has always been there. It just found a voice. And we haven't come a long ways from 50 years ago, from the 60s and the 70s and the civil rights movement. That's why I'm concerned that there's no student movements. Because if any student movement is gaining force, it's the right wing. They have become emboldened. They have become free to spread their hate and to continue to be of that opinion they've had all along. That's why I think that in the K through 12 is so important to sensitize, to educate, and to be able to appreciate the differences, the cultural and the historical facts and contributions that we represent, not just Latinos, all of the 4 major ethnic groups. And of course, there's women and there's all kinds of other social movements that need to be represented as well. But the core is indigenous peoples, American Indians, the Mexican, Chicano, Latino, the African American. African Americans are losing tons of students. Universities are seeing a significant drop. And of course, Asian Americans that are growing, but they're also a different type of minority, right? Roberto touched on that earlier today, about they call it the quiet minority or the nice minority, but they have what is it? The model minority. But they have a significant number of undocumented people. That's why 96% of Obama's deportations does not add up. In other words, they deported only from one continent, without saying they didn't deport this or that other ethnic group. We don't wish that on anybody. It just means factually that they only deported Latinos, 96%. So they have a reason to be quiet, to stay out of the radar. But the fact is that 40% of those 12 million undocumented immigrants came across an ocean. They did not pay a coyote. They flew in, and they overstayed their visas. 40%. That's what, maybe at least 5 million. So who are they? They're the Europeans, they're the Asians, they're the Middle Easterns, they're from every part of the world except from this continent. I mean, not that they don't fly in as well. You know, many people also come in with a tourist visa and they overstay. They come to Disneyland, right? You heard that story many times. Oh, yeah, but they told me we were going to Disneyland, you know. Or they cross the border with other kids' papers. The first one of the first two dreamers that I took, he was 40 days old when they brought him across. How much can you remember? You are, excuse me, you are from here. And of course, this is happening throughout, you know. I mean, there's so much opportunity versus Central America is fleeing violence and you know, the same thing with the Mexican population. Now what we're seeing were the Puerto Ricanos because of the hurricanes, but they're legal. So I think there's something like 60,000 have already migrated in the last month or so. And of course, it's going to continue to happen. But they have no problem traveling, coming into the U.S. Something else, another question. Yes, sir.
Armando, thank you for your wonderful talk, and thank you especially for your work that you've done over decades to try to make our country, help our country live up to its ideals. Have you seen, and what is your critical view of the possibility that the Dreamer students who you've worked with, who've had this opportunity to reconnect with Mexico, are able to build coalitions of support from the 94% of all Latinos and Latinas in the United States who are under the age of 18, who are U.S. citizens by birth? Mm-hmm. So there's this interesting dynamic, right, that we're all familiar with, of the appropriate emphasis on Dreamers, but it's a very small percentage of the, if you will, future generations of Latinos, and but it serves as a catalyst for political action in a way that relatively few other issues have. Do the Dreamers, when they come back, use what they've experienced as a way of trying to broaden understanding with the U.S. citizen Latino age cohort, other students at Cal State Long Beach and Cal State Northridge and all of the universities, you know, that were represented there, as a way to try to catalyze what you're talking about, right? The importance of a student movement. And what do you see as the major opportunities and challenges of trying to do that?
Well, I think you raised a very interesting question about the others. It could be within the family, the so-called mixed families that have some that were brought in and some that were born here. So there's different perspectives there. But I think the key is to educate the student population in general, not only about Dreamers. I think this definitely should be part of the agenda of raising the concerns about just where in the hell are we going as a country, as a nation, the principles, the ideals that are being stomped upon every day. I mean, we reacted to the video of his very offensive language and behavior that he admitted to in regards to women. And it's amazing that now, because of what's happening in Hollywood, we're seeing the crucifixion of many of these people that have been getting away with it all along, right? I won't mention any names, but it's the Fox News people. It's the Hollywood producers and major figures. But why did that not happen when the bus recording became public? And let me say, with all my prejudice, I am of the opinion that women gave them a pass. Women saw, they bought the justification, oh, it's just locker talk. No. This has been a part of Hollywood all along. And in our own experience in California, the groper the serial groper that we had as governor was also given a pass. Arnold has 16 women that denounced his sexual predator behavior, and women gave him a pass. So it's almost like selective incidents. Now, why is it that women are not standing up right now and connecting the dots? Because nothing has been erased of this man's past. Not just what was, became a political issue of the campaign, but in Hollywood, there's tons of material about his predator-like behavior. For some reason, that has not stuck on him, or they have not come after him. So, going back to your question, I think it's going to take very creative organizing around that. And I think students have the answer. Students can rise up. It's not a matter of just cleaning up Hollywood overnight. It's a culture that has to change. But he has been very much a part of that, as we all know. And I think, frankly, your question begs a much larger response. I think that we need to get students to become aware, not be totally sidetracked. I mean, we're dull asleep. Everyone is totally involving their own personal life with their electronic device. And even though there's so much power there, we're not using it. We're not using it to sound the alarm bell. And I'm not saying there's any one sector. I think it's all campuses. There's just a missing link there with the social movements that should be activated. And this is definitely one of them. That's why Dreamers is almost like this phenomena that happens. Pobrecitos, it's like all of a sudden, overnight, this empathy that comes about. But it has to be more than, patting them in the back so they'll feel better. It has to be, okay, so that how do we mobilize in terms of lobbying, in terms of teachings, educational forums, addressing the critical moral questions of our time. And what Senator Flake said, the word came back to me, complicit. I will no longer be complicit. Well, I dare to say that we're all to some extent complicit of letting this nightmare go on. It's almost like, okay, you roll over it, maybe the nightmare will go away. Okay, and I think that's where it begins. We need to, and that's what I'm trying to do here with you as well. To say, look, there's no blame game here. It's a matter of a wake-up call. That's the silver lining that I see of this execution of DACA, and there may still be a fight in court, because it could be that the courts will rule exactly as they ruled in favor of the Republican governors when they said, no, DAPA will not come about. DACA remains, but we deny expanding it to 3 years or the terms of it. And DAPA was blocked effectively because they didn't follow the process. And blame Obama all you want. He's gone now. The fact is that it's the Democratic Party that needs to get back in office, but they're the ones that were in control of both houses. You may recall when Obama took over, it was both houses that were Democratic. But they decided consciously not to push for immigration reform. They wanted to put all of their political capital on health reform. And now we know what has happened to health reform. It's so it's a political agenda, undoubtedly. And we need not be afraid of talking politics in college campuses. But there's more coming from the right wing because now they're exercising, with Jeff Sessions' protection, freedom of speech. And they're forcing all of these crazy people. Have you had any on campus? Anybody try to, well, you know, it just takes a few students to say, hey, we want to have, you know, so-and-so on campus to express a different point of view. And we have to respect freedom of speech, freedom of expression, because that's what the entire social movement of the 60s started with, you know, at Berkeley with Mario Savio and the free speech movement. So I think we got to go back to square one and organize around those basic principles. I just don't see faculty, my colleagues, very engaged. It's almost, again, it's, you know, I'm more concerned about my faculty contract than what's going around us or what they're expressing in the classroom. You know, if we were all using the classroom as a political forum, and there's no violation of academic standards there, it's engaging the students to respond, you know, to think outside of the box. Because we're not going to a very good place. We're heading in the wrong direction, you know. Did I answer your question? Okay, so it's 6:30. You guys want to wrap it up? Any burning questions? Yes.
A dignified walkout. They planned it well, and they were prepared to speak to the press, and it went all over the world. Mm-hmm. When Murray, the eugenicist, came here, the students protested, and there were many, many protests, and the students, some of them are here who were leaders in that protest, and some have gone on to law school or Teach for America. So this campus was really hot, I would say, last academic year.
Yeah, I do remember, I think Pence was invited to be a commencement speaker, right? Yeah. And he was canceled. Or did he still come? Did he still come?
He came, and our students, about 200 of our students, graduating seniors who were it was a diverse group, but led by Latinas who have graduated and who were so hurt on behalf of their families, their mixed status families who came, and all. And they, as I say, they were very well prepared. They had many meetings about it. They walked out in a dignified, orderly fashion. They were very eloquent when they spoke to the press. But that was really the culmination. And it was, again, very hurtful, but a culmination of many, many activities on campus that these students who are here were involved in.
Fantastic. Well, that's the least that we can do, to stand up, because, see, as I recollect, he's such a, he's a Catholic, right? And he's a very staunch.
He converted to evangelical Protestantism.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the guy.
Oh, you mean the top buffoon?
No, Pence.
Oh, no, Pence converted.
Yeah. Well, still, we know he's an extreme. I think he's the one that says that he doesn't want to be in a room with another female by himself, right? He must not know how to control himself or something, Anyway, thank you so much for being here, okay? I really appreciate that. Thank you, Luis. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you very much.